Hello, Zero Books readers. In a recent interview for the Zero Books podcast, Angela Nagle, author of the best-selling book Kill All Normies, was asked the following question. Do you think that you should have spent more time refuting alt-right ideas in your book?
I think that a book refuting alt-right ideas would be great, but, there's a remarkable lack of interest in articles and things like that refuting alt-right ideas. And that's very interesting to me. Like, the funny thing is that the kind of people who are most enraged by the book on the left, will say, or the whatever internet cultural left, they're the people who say, oh, no, you shouldn't engage with their ideas because that's debating Nazis. And, so I've suggested loads of times to people, do you think we should kind of try to just take claim by claim and just try to actually first refute them and then present an alternative, approach to the same problem? And I have been generally met with either indifference or something about how we shouldn't debate Nazis, we shouldn't engage with their ideas in any way, or editors just going, no, I don't think so.
Let's take a look at a recent interview debate between Gary Younge from The Guardian and the alt-right spokesperson Richard Spencer. Younge himself decided to interview Spencer because he thought Spencer needed to be confronted. His ideas needed to be challenged and overcome. However, once Gary Younge confronted Spencer, he found that the alt-righter was, quote, ignorant, historically illiterate, incoherent, and most of all, personally insulting.
Look at the average life of an African American in the United States. It's far better than any African living in Africa.
Really? So slavery was good for them?
Look, they benefited from being in a different nation than their own, no doubt.
Really?
No doubt. How can you deny that?
Younge wasn't prepared to encounter somebody so thoroughly unconcerned with basic morality, and because of this, he relied on his justified feelings of indignation rather than countering Spencer's assertion, rather than arguing for his own position. When tackling an assertion like Spencer's, the best approach is to discover whatever sense might be contained in it, even when it appears to be absurd on its face.
Oh, it all begins to leak out then that the space program is just one giant big cover-up. It's a covert operation between the United States government and the Soviet Union.
While Richard Spencer is particularly outlandish and hateful, this argument didn't sound quite as bad when it was expressed in different terms by Christopher Hitchens when he was writing for The Nation back in 1992. Hitchens, rather than writing about Africa, took on the colonization of North America as his subject. Quote, those who view the history of North America as a narrative of genocide and slavery are, it seems to me, hopelessly stuck on this reactionary position. They can think of the Western expansion of the United States only in terms of plague blankets, bootleg booze, and dead buffalo, never in terms of the medicine chest, the wheel, and the railway. But it does happen to be the way that history is made, and to complain about it is as empty as complaining about climactic, geological, or tectonic shifts. Another variation on the same argument can be found at the Foundation for Economic Education website in an essay entitled Capitalism is Good for the Poor. Quote, critics frequently accuse markets and capitalism of making life worse for the poor. This refrain is certainly common in the halls of left-leaning academia, as well as in broader intellectual circles. But like so many other criticisms of capitalism, this one ignores the very real and very available facts of history. The biggest gains in the fight against poverty have occurred in countries that have opened up their markets. Nothing has done more to lift humanity out of poverty than the market economy. This claim is true whether we are looking at a time span of decades or of centuries. The number of people worldwide living on less than $2 per day today is less than half of what it was in 1990. The proper way to refute Spencer's claim is to refute the Foundation for Economic Education first. Concepts such as whiteness or even Western civilization are products of modern capitalism, and these terms obscure more than they reveal. Specifically, the concept of whiteness emerged out of the slave trade, and despite Spencer's objections, black slaves really were responsible for building the economic power of America.
But you know that that's not your real home.
Please don't
your
tell me. Please don't tell me what I know.
Didn't build it.
Sorry? Listen, my ancestors built it tenfold and weren't paid for it.
Look, it's like saying that
really? You could have enslaved someone
else. It's like saying African Americans
really?
Built the United States. Like,
they did.
But
they literally built the White House.
Because we made them do it.
Oh, and you're proud of that. You're proud of that.
Well, it's had bad consequences, but the fact is, yes, I am ultimately proud of it.
You're proud of slavery.
I'm ultimately proud of my ancestors because
you're proud of slavery.
I embrace all of it.
What Spencer is arguing is that the ends justify the means. He is agreeing with the Foundation for Economic Education website, and in one sense, with Karl Marx, who in his tract The Poverty of Philosophy wrote, "Without slavery, North America, the most progressive country, would be transformed into a primitive country. You have only to erase North America from the map of nations, and you will have anarchy, the total decay of commerce and of modern civilization. But to let slavery disappear is to erase North America from the map of nations." Now, it's important to understand that while Marx was, on the one hand, an admirer of capitalism, especially for its dynamism and power, he was chiefly an ardent and thoroughgoing critic of it. By pointing out how slavery was a necessary component of the expansion of capital, both in North America and in Europe, Marx was demonstrating how unacceptable capitalism itself was, and how necessary it was to overcome it. What Spencer is doing is conflating capitalism and industrialization with white supremacy. The conflation is entirely wrong, but what is true is that the development of global capitalism as we know it came about because of slavery. When Spencer tells Gary Younge that Africans have benefited from white supremacy, the argument can be boiled down to a claim that Gary has to take the good with the bad. Of course, even if we stay within the realm of capitalism, even if we assume that industrial and technological development could never have occurred in any other way than it did, that doesn't mean that white supremacy is still helpful to capital and its development today. Further, there's no reason we have to accept that exploitation and oppression are universals that can never be overcome, or that another system of economic activity was impossible and remains impossible. What I want to tell Richard Spencer and his ilk is that in one sense, they're no different from any other liberal. That is, they too cherry-pick what they like about capitalism and ignore the rest. So for Spencer, he likes how the historical development of capital favored his European ancestors, but what he ignores, or wants to deny, is how capitalism had to destroy ethnic and cultural distinctions in order to achieve the technological and scientific gains that Spencer attributes to the white race. What he doesn't understand is that his concept of whiteness is threadbare, totally meaningless outside of the specific historical moment when capital development required that human beings be treated like animals. I'll close this video with a quote from Walter Benjamin. "There is no document of civilization which is not at the same time a document of barbarism. And just as such a document is not free of barbarism, barbarism taints also the manner in which it was transmitted from one owner to another. A historical materialist, therefore, disassociates himself from it as far as possible. He regards it as his task to brush history against the grain. The tradition of the oppressed teaches us that the state of emergency in which we live is not the exception, but the rule. We must attain to a conception of history that is in keeping with this insight. Then we shall clearly realize that it is our task to bring about a real state of emergency, and this will improve our position in the struggle against fascism."